help with tax, don't know what to do. The Brysons are here for you. We know every tip and trick. It's serious tax talk with a Louisiana twist.
Hello, hello. It's great to see you, and welcome back to another edition of Talkin Tax. I'm your host, Ryan Ruff, and as you know, on this show, it's serious tax talk with a Louisiana twist. I've got Carrie and Angie Bryson, the co-founders of the Bryson Law Firm, LLC. They'll be joining me momentarily, but first, look, we want to thank you, our audience, for finding your way here back to the show. As you know, each episode, Carrie, Angie, and myself, we tackle different tax talk, tax-related subjects. We tap into their years' worth of experience in this space. We learn about some of the cases that they've worked on in the past. And then, of course, we talk about some strategies on how to mitigate some of these circumstances should the IRS come knocking. Today, hey, look, today's a special episode because we've got our Facebook live stream going. So if you are in the audience and you're joining us live on Facebook, on the Brysons page, we thank you for being a part of it. Feel free to leave a comment or even a question below for us. We'll be monitoring that as the show's going on today, and we'll do our best to try and acknowledge any of your questions or comments along the way. So either way, let us know where you're watching from, or feel free to leave a question for us below. If you're checking us out maybe on YouTube or a podcasting platform after the fact, hey, all the same, great to have you with us still. But that being said, let's get into our topic of the day. The topic of the day is a lien versus a levy. We're going to get into what they are, what the differences are between them, and then of course the strategies that you'll need to get out of some of these situations that the IRS might put you in. So that being said, let's go ahead and bring Carrie and Angie out to get today's conversation rolling. Carrie, Angie, great to see you guys. How you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing
great.
well. Doing well.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys.
Yeah, broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Got the live show going today. I'm already seeing we got a handful of viewers that are with us right now. So again, for any live viewers, feel free to leave a comment or question below. Let us know where you're watching from. We'll do our best to answer any questions, of course, along the way. That being said, guys, liens versus levies. That's the topic at hand today. I think the best place for us to start is what are they? Let's start with liens first. Give us that high-level overview of what we're looking at when we say a lien.
Go ahead.
Usually we start with Angie. So I mean, let's go.
So a lien, the quickest analogy I can make, or it's not really an analogy, is basically a mortgage. It is the IRS's way to notify the world essentially that potentially you as a taxpayer owe taxes to the IRS that are unpaid. And it is a way for them, the IRS, to secure its position as a creditor with the rest of the world over your property. So it is an encumbrance on your property, and it's a way for the IRS to secure its position. So if you have a bank or a mortgage company that you owe money to, which most people do, they would maybe be first because you got the mortgage whenever you bought your home. Then the IRS potentially would be second. If there's someone else who's got another mortgage out there, then they may be third. Or you have like a refi or a second mortgage. That basically, in a nutshell, is a lien. And it's very different from a levy, which I'll
and I'll add on the lien though, because I've experienced a lot in the practice, and it's probably a point that's more legal than it,
Yeah,
but
I know where this is going.
Every now and then I will get a little legal. I know that, but anyway, the point I would make though is the way the statutes are written on liens. The lien actually arises the very second that the taxpayer incurs an obligation. Okay, so as soon as you file a return and don't pay, as soon as you owe the government, the lien actually arises, and a lot of taxpayers, they miss that point because, and it has to do, like I said, legally, because this is where the ranking of in the rankings, and we have to pay attention to this because it's the actual day, the moment the obligation arose. So the filing is not the lien. The filing is a notice of lien. And that's effective as to third parties. We all know that third parties can rely on the public records, So if they look and there's no lien filed, no notice, then they can deal with that taxpayer if there's a lien. But between the taxpayer and the government, the lien is already there. And that's just from in a controversy we do, that
It's
sometimes
important for us
it's
on our
important for
side.
us, for the public. If they're able to rely on the public record. So if the public records has no lien, then that person has no tax lien at the time. The notice has to be filed to be effective. So I would
Gotcha.
just make a little bitty point about tax liens. It's just a little different.
Right.
People don't realize that.
Sure.
And no, yes, and no, and so the IRS once again is the super creditor, because other creditors, of course, they have to. There's a whole different. That's a different ballgame. But the IRS, they're the super creditor. They have special rules in place, and that's one of the special rules.
Gotcha. I mean, Carrie, you took the words right out of my mouth. My next question was, how does somebody even get a lien placed on it? It sounds like it's once a debt is owed to the IRS, and it's a matter of them coming to collect. So this is one way of collecting, if you will. Let's dive into what a levy is. Give us what that high-level overview of what a levy looks like, and where this situation might come into play.
Yeah. You want me to do it? Or you
Yeah,
want
go ahead.
Okay. All right. Levies. So the general basic levy. Okay. There's two types. There's the one-time levy, and then there's the continuing levy. And it's very important. And, unfortunately for the public, which of course I think sometimes intentionally, the IRS uses them improperly. They'll use the continuing levy as a one-time levy so that they don't have to keep doing the work to keep filing the levy. Because a one-time levy is simply that. It's filed, it's one time, it's wherever they filed it, usually, it's a bank levy.
Bank levy.
A bank levy is a classic example of a one-time levy. So when they file that levy, whatever they have at that moment is seized. You can technically go the next day and deposit $50,000, and that's not subject to the levy. Now, the banks, of course, who do not want the IRS looking at them
All the time.
they're going to honor, they do all kind of crazy stuff. And then it becomes an issue. Then the IRS just takes a position. Well, that's between your bank and
Give it all
and
to
you.
me.
Yeah, we're not, and they're certainly not going to give it back once the bank makes that mistake.
Yeah.
So, but a one-time levy is, like I said, it is the one-time thing. The continuing levy, the classic example is the wage levy. But you have to be a wage earner, but if you're a wage earner and they file it, it's a garnishment of wages, basically. And that continues until the IRS releases it. So they only have to do that one time, and it stays on. But like when you get independent contractors and things like that, they'll try to use a wage levy. And, of course, most employers, we get calls a lot of calls from employers who don't really have a tax liability, but they have their favorite independent contractor employee. Just got to, what do they do? How do we handle this? Mm-hmm. Well, there's rules in place as to how you handle that. But that's a common issue, is that independent contractors have a wage levy filed against them, which is a continuing levy, and they feel like they have to, and that's not accurate. And the IRS has used that improperly. It's wrong. It shouldn't be honored. But when you tell an employer that who doesn't want the IRS on them, they're like, hey,
they defer.
Sure. Everybody defers to, oh, I don't want the IRS coming after me. I'm gonna do whatever I can to keep them out of my hair. So,
well, I would add the biggest way to describe the difference between, I know we're not there yet, but a levy is an active way to collect the tax. So they are going to grab your money, seize your money.
The levy is the seizure.
So they're going to go to your bank account and, grab what's there. They're going to go to your paycheck, grab what's there, levy your customers if have customers and things like that. That's an active way to grab money to pay the taxes. The lien is a more passive way to secure the IRS's position, which can lead into the active portion of collection. But it's just a passive, hey, this person has a tax problem. And so the reason I'm saying that is because we have a lot of people call and say, oh, I got a lien and everything's seized. So the first question we have to ask is, wait, time out. Is it a lien or a levy? You got a notice of federal tax lien, you're good. Your house is not seized or your property is still safe. So don't panic. You do have an issue, clearly, but that's a huge differentiating factor when people call in and say, I got a levy, I got a lien. Well, which one is it? Let me see it,
And not to get too granular, but I probably should have said too, like a lien filed, it's filed in the county, parish in Louisiana. It's parishes.
It's a parish.
In the parish, it's parish. In the parishes where, but it only affects immovable property in that parish. So
Yes.
if I have land in an adjoining parish, it doesn't affect that at all. It has no effect on it. Now, The problem becomes, once again, the public, they look at it, they check the public records, they see, so then everybody knows that you have a tax problem. Well, then they really, even though it doesn't affect that piece of property, but it is only effective. Now, the IRS does also have the right to file in the UCC records, which would be movable properties. Not commonly done, but it is done in some cases. So we be careful with those, because that's kind of more of you can get kind of statewide on the movables. But anyway, so that's probably should have mentioned that.
Right. No, it's all good stuff. And that was going to be my next question, is kind of giving us that fundamental difference between the two. And it sounds just like Angie had said, it's an active seizing of, money assets when it comes to the levy side of things. Whereas a lien, I don't want to say it's a warning, but they're asserting their position. So that being said, let's talk. Yeah, right.
But they're asserting their position. But if, if they have a lien filed and you sell that piece of property, then then they get all the money. So it's just a path. They're just sitting back and waiting. They have you. They really have, for lack of a better word to put it, they've cramped your style as a taxpayer. Now you can't sell that property without them getting paid.
And guys, so that sounds like it's one of those intangible, elements that comes into play when a lien is placed on your assets. Are there any other, really pertinent things that taxpayers should be aware of if a lien is placed on a given asset of theirs? I know we're using home as the example, but can it be placed on other assets, and what might be the repercussions of that?
Well, it covers all of your immovable property in that parish.
Okay.
It's not just your home. So if I own, Carrie and Angie own a home, and we own a piece of land, and it's in our names, that's the big differentiating factor. So, if Bryson Law Firm had a tax problem and they filed a lien against us in our name, it would not affect BLF property. It would only affect our personal property, but it affects everything. So it's not limited to just residential property. It's whatever you own in that parish or county.
Yeah. The lien doesn't specify the property.
Right.
Because it's everything in the parish.
Taxpayer.
It specifies the taxpayer and the amount owed, which doesn't even do that because it's misleading.
Fluid. Right.
Because it's a very fluid number, because penalties and interest are going every day. So it does say that this is the amount this day, so it has to be calculated. You can't use that as a payment.
It's just a notice. It's just there's something here sort of
payments could have been made and So it has nothing to do really with the amount, other than they do put the amount in. I mean, payments could have been made. This could have been credits could have been. So it's you can't use it as a payoff.
A normal creditor has to file a lawsuit unless you grant them a mortgage, which is contractual, right? So a normal creditor that you owe money to, I don't know, whatever, just to say a credit card company or whatever, has to take you to court. You have a hearing, and you have to have someone actively on behalf of the court, or you have to consent to a judgment. And then that judgment is taken to the courthouse and recorded, and it basically acts as a lien on, secures the creditor's position on your property. The IRS doesn't have to do that. And that's why Carrie's calling the IRS a super creditor. And that's why people, taxpayers, general public, basically gets blindsided a lot of times with this. Oh, wait, I went to buy a car and I have a lien. I never even knew I had a lien. Maybe would have done something different if I would have understood the process. So all the IRS has to do is to, you have a balance due. They send out a 30-day notice, and there's the lien. That lien can come about the 31st day, or they can file it 8 years later. There's no rhyme or reason to when it will essentially pop up.
And it's the same with levies. I mean, the
levies too, but
it's even more. Before if you owed me money on some obligation, and before I could garnish your wages or try to collect this, I have to go to court and get a judge. Like Angie said, I got to get a judge involved. There's a judge involved.
You can't just take it.
That protects my rights, your rights, everybody's rights, and make sure it's done. The IRS has no obligation to do anything other than file it, and it's not a judge involved. It's an IRS employee, a bureaucrat, in making that decision to issue that lien or levy, and that's it. There's no judge. There's not even a lawyer involved.
It's a unilateral system. Let's be real.
Yes, very. That's why I always call them the super creditor, and they are. I mean, there's no way around it. They're a super creditor.
Right, guys. In staying with staying with liens before we transition back over to levies, let's play the game of hypotheticals here. Let's say I've got a lien. They've hit me with something for my house. Walk me through what that meeting would look like if I was to come into your office, show you my documentation, show you, what I'm up against here, and what would be some strategies and best steps forward.
The lien, in fact, the first thing we would say is, look, the lien is on. It's very passive. It's a passive thing. Let's deal with the problem. Let's fix your problem. And, unfortunately for you, this lien is not going to come off until the taxes are paid, until we resolve this liability. Okay. That would be the first, resolve it some way, settlement, payment, whatever we're going to do.
They got to go away.
We got to get rid of this tax problem,
right,
because they're not just going to take the lien off. Now, there are ways to get a lien removed once the balance has come down to a certain amount, or if you have other property that you could substitute. Very rare does that happen, because it's got to be 3 times the value of what the liability, nobody, by that point, it just lets you, and you still have a lien, it's just on other property. So it doesn't, it's a rarely used thing, but they do have mechanisms in place to get a lien off beforehand. But usually it's, look, we got to deal with the problem. And if you come in, just like if you come in and you meet with me and you say, I have a tax liability, the first thing I'm going to tell you is you're going to get a lien filed, and there's not anything I can do about it. I can't get it off. I can't get it, so let's be upfront about that. You're not getting the lien off. Levies, I can do a lot about. That requires legal work. Do thing. I can get your levies. I can get that going. But liens, it's going to happen. And I just, it's a matter at that point of, it's going to happen. Just relax when it does. It's very passive. We're going to take care of your tax problem. That's why you're here. Let's take care of the tax problem, and then it will take care. It will resolve itself once we take care of our tax problem.
It's not a quick fix for a lien.
There's no quick fix. It's going to happen. If it hasn't happened, usually it's going to happen, because it's done by the computer. Honestly, there's really no human even looking at it. It's a computer that files all this. It's not like look, once again, we get back to the super creditor. It's a big computer that files everything. So let's don't kid ourselves and think we got a human looking at it, and somebody's going to make a decision whether to or not to.
Well, if there is a human looking at it, they're going to file it.
They're going to file it anyway. But it's
it's part of the check. It's one of the checkbox items.
The reason the computer does it is because it's automatic.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. If you're the one in the gazillion chance that you have a tax liability and the notice has not been filed, hey, keep living the way you're living and keep going, and don't raise your head and let's take care of your tax problem.
Sure.
Unless this thing ever happens. But so that's usually how I think we handle liens.
Got it. And guys,
want to solve the tax problem.
Sure. And in switching over to levies, I know you had mentioned wage garnishments is really one of the more primary ways the IRS goes about handling a levy. Walk me through this, because, we've touched a bit about wage garnishment, in prior episodes, but this is a really big one, because if when you think about it at its core, the main way I'm making my living is through my income. And if my income's being seized right off the top, obviously that's going to leave a drastic impact on my life, my lifestyle, X, Y, and Z. So walk me through this wage garnishment process, maybe a way to finally get your head above water if it's happening to you, and then also just kind of what the best strategies are to maybe go through addressing a lien or a wage garnishment altogether.
So much there.
I know, sorry, I'm throwing you a curveball here.
I know,
and that's why I wanted the answer to this one early on, because I saw this one coming. So
okay, so I think with what people need to understand about, let's just go with wage levies. Bank levies are really a different animal. Wage levies are the IRS's way, in our experience. We've done thousands of these cases, so to get your attention, right? So if you have a wage levy, in theory, I'm not saying it generally, I hate to generalize, but you have had the IRS send you multiple notices, here's your tax bill, file your tax return, or if you have filed, this is your bill, you owe X dollars, pay it. Then you get another notice. Hey, you really need to pay your tax bill, and here's how to do it. Then you get another notice. So there's a series of notices, and then you get another notice, the final notice, that will say, look, if you don't pay your tax bill, we are going to levy. And that's a bank levy, wage levy, whatever. And so there's a time period where there's some activity on your file, on your accounts, within which you have to pay attention. So what happens typically is that has passed for a lot of people, or they're not paying attention, or it happened a year or 2 or 3 years ago. And then all of a sudden, a wage levy happens. So I guess my point is you could have gotten those notices a long time ago, and now you're experiencing a wage levy. And that's the IRS's way of saying, hey, you better pay attention. I need you. That's just their big stick. We need you to get this thing fixed. They will continue to levy your wages if you don't do anything. It's going to stay there and until you get it removed. And the way to get it removed is to do something. Mm-hmm. So you either have to enter into an installment agreement, file an offer, or all the other options that we talked about, in tandem, in the other episodes. So you have to actively take steps to get it removed by doing something proactive with the IRS to solve the issues and enter into an agreement with them to have it go away.
My quick follow-up to that is, how responsive is the IRS if you reach that agreement? So let's say I agree to an installment agreement. How quickly would I start seeing my wages not be garnished?
Well, on that note, there's a side point to that. It's right away.
Okay.
I mean, we can get it released. If I call today for an installment agreement for Ryan, and I get an agreement or I make a proposal, then as part of that, I request release of the levy.
Got
the
it.
way, and that happens. The other thing, which this kind of a whole side point is, you can appeal a lot of these things, right? So if I'm working on the agreement and I'm trying to work, the financials and get things in place to solve, that takes time, right? So I can either file an appeal, I file a taxpayer advocate request requesting release of the levy while we work on things. So there are other things I can do administratively to get the levy released while we work on your final solutions.
Okay.
And that's the appeal, the 911. So there are things we can do, but again, you have to be taking active steps,
right?
And showing that good faith that, hey, look, I'm taking active steps. I've got my attorney calling. I want to make these requests. Can you give me 30 days? This is my plan. And then we can request release of the levy, and it's a letter. We get a letter on a form that says levy's released, sent to the employer. And then the employer has to honor that. Once they get that letter, they always release it because they have something to rely on now. They don't feel like they're in a vacuum.
Gotcha. That's really interesting that the element of good faith comes into play there, where it's, as long as they know that active steps are being taken to address the issue at hand, that, they'll give you a little bit back, they'll help you help them in a way. So
I don't want to make it sound easy. It's not a job. This can take time.
And I would add, okay, I'll give you a little different tack on that than what Angie said. I'm going to look at it from the IRS perspective.
Mine is better.
Of course, it's better.
Always.
She's on this side, so I'm going to try to explain it from the IRS world and their world. Okay, they are graded, promoted, judged, given rate, whatever the word is. That's by closing files. Their job is not necessarily to collect the tax.
They don't work on contingency.
Their job is to close the file. Yeah, in the old days they did work on contingency.
Yeah, right.
That's a different story.
Commission.
They're given, their job is to close their files. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the wage levy or any levy is, and just like the lien, is not the way that they're not. I mean, they are collecting the tax, obviously, because they're seizing property, but they're not trying. The last thing they want is a continuing wage levy that's going to last because they haven't closed that file. That file's ongoing. Okay, so that's their leverage. They want you to call when they have the leverage, and that's from our perspective. That's where we are. We want to maintain the leverage at all times. Once you give them the leverage, and I think where they're misleading is that they issue those levies. They get taxpayers who call. Oh, we're going to get the levy off. We're going to do that, and then you enter into a bad deal. And they get very bad deals that way because they had the leverage. They took advantage of the taxpayer. Taxpayers have no idea. They call,
agree to anything.
They're giving them all the stuff. They're giving the information. They ask the questions wrong, so they give them the wrong information, which makes their deal even worse for them instead of giving them the correct information. So it's a little bit more than that. And the only other thing,
You're right,
the only other thing I'll add too Several years ago, recently changed. I'm just throwing this out there just to show you how I still, of course, I'm the one that keeps harping the IRS is misleading us. They're misleading us. They are, like on these notices that they have to give before they can do these levies and liens. I mean, Angie's right. I mean, there's a series that they go through.
Say that again.
And as you, and as you go through the series, I mean, some of these letters are ridiculous. They're like, we're gonna take everything you have. We're gonna seize all your property.
Pretty threatening.
Well, that's not even the letter that allows them to do it. But there's one letter that they have to issue, okay, that gives you your appellate rights and advises you of your rights. That's the letter that they have to issue before they can levy. Well, so you go through this series of all these real aggressive letters, and all of a sudden you get this one little letter, and it's in very little thing. It's just, hey, you have a tax liability of X. You have a right to appeal this within 30 days or That's it. That's all it says. It doesn't tell you that, we're going to levy in 30 days. So it's a very innocuous, just a very.
The one that's most important.
The most important
least
letter is the one that gets the least reaction from the taxpayer because they want that leveraged. Because once that, it's an easy way for us to appeal and argue it on appeal and get it up on appeals and make our good arguments on appeal. Because the appeals now, let's be real about appeals. Appeals is not going to a court. It's not going to a judge, an impartial judge. It's going to a well-trained, well-seasoned IRS person that's been there a long time and knows the systems and knows the IRS rules. So you're appealing to the IRS, but at least you're appealing to somebody who's trained. And if there were errors made at the lower level, procedurally, whatever, or technically, they will correct it and they will address it.
They have authority and skills to do it.
Yeah, and they know and they can recognize it.
Right.
So anyway. So that's kind of, but that letter just kind of slides right. If you're waiting on that mean letter to give you the deal, you got to really know what you're reading when it right to the hearing, right?
Sure.
So anyway, go ahead.
No, absolutely. This is all great stuff, and I appreciate that insight because it is, of course, obviously you guys are seasoned veterans in this space. So sure, a lot of this show, you're sharing your insights from your seat, working for the client, but it is also great to hear what the insight looks like and the mindset really from the IRS and the other side of the table, because that's only going to help, our audience understand what they're up against when it comes to each one of these situations. So guys, my last and final question for you today is just surrounding the idea of any cases in particular that come to the top of your mind when we're talking about liens versus levies. Is there any instance where you guys really went to battle for somebody or really, had a maybe just a tough stretch of conversations, arguments, maybe even with the IRS to work on behalf of your client? Because look, at the end of the day, as we've said time and time again on this show, is if this is unfamiliar territory or uncharted territory for you, somebody in our audience watching or listening today, seek out professional help. The Brysons are here to help. We want to make sure that you're getting the representation you need to address these issues. But more importantly, I want to hear from you guys, an example or anything like that of going through this process for a client of yours. Do you have anything that jumps to the front of your mind?
Angie has. I know she's been in several doozies lately, so I'm sure she's got some great examples, and I'll let her talk about those. But the only point I want to make that we haven't made, since we are, our offices are in Louisiana and we're around, but in Louisiana, the LDR, what we've talked about today is completely different.
Yeah.
So if it's an LDR tax problem, the IRS and the LDR work completely different.
Any state tax.
And the state
tax.
So the state taxes are. Louisiana does have income tax.
Mm-hmm. Well, the flip side of that is what we've said regarding the IRS applies basically across the country.
Yeah, it's supposed to apply.
It goes from Florida to
Louisiana
Texas,
is supposed to follow a lot of the same rules, but they don't. So it's completely different in that, they're I guess they're graded differently because they will collect the tax, and if you call them, you're going to get a really bad deal. It doesn't change the scope. I mean, the way the Louisiana Department of Revenue solves cases is very illogical. It has nothing to do with actually trying to get the tax collected, I find.
Well,
it's very ineffective.
It's like apples and oranges.
Ineffective for like a taxpayer who really wants to resolve their problem. It's more or less, they will just seize all day long and they don't really care. So.
Gotcha. And Angie, any particular case though, that jumps out to you?
I'm trying to figure out which one I want to talk about more. but I'm going to go with, so this particular one, we represent a business that has some business tax issues, and the owner also has some personal tax issues. So it's kind of a mess, but there was a lien filed, and we were working with, we've requested that the IRS subordinate the lien, so that this particular taxpayer can go and get a second mortgage on some equity to remove some equity from his residence, the residence. Well, that, the taxpayer spent a lot of time working with a local mortgage company and got a commitment letter from the mortgage company, which is step number one. Then we take that. So you've got to get the lien removed to have the whole thing. It's contingent on having the lien removed, obviously, the whole transaction. So now so we've got the commitment letter, this guy's bending over backwards to get it done. And so step two is to go to the IRS and say, hey, we've got this deal together. This is what this deal is going to yield dollar-wise. Will you subordinate the lien to the creditor? It's just, their position is number two, and we need them to be number three so the new creditor can step into number two and secure its loan. That took almost 3 months to get a response for, which meant that the taxpayer, and then so we get a response, and it's a typical response. Yes, if you pay X dollars, we will subordinate. Okay. So in the meantime, the interest rate's gone up, and the mortgage package is now expired, with the lender, because they can only do these deals and secure these deals for so long in the mortgage business. So now we're basically starting over now. Essentially, the mortgage broker's done, because it's not good business practice for this person to keep chasing this loan. They're not making any money on it. Let's be real. So they're done, hands off, let go of the rope. And now we've got the IRS through a revenue officer saying, if you don't get this paid in full, this number, which was the commitment letter we had previously, if you don't get it done now, we're going to come in and seize this other piece of property, seize it, which is execute on the lien. It's now active at that point. We're going to take you to court. We're going to get a local, person, because they have to do that to seize and sell property. We're going to seize this piece of property if you don't pay it in this amount, which is a lot of money. It's not easy, by this date. And these people are, and I believe, normally I would say, this person's bluffing from the IRS, but I think she's serious, because it's been a long time and the circumstances it's just messy,
Okay.
So I guess my point is that, had they acted timely, and if we could have gotten this transaction done. There was an attorney involved to close the deal. The mortgage broker was ready. We had to wait and wait and wait and badger this person to get this commitment letter. And now we're at the beginning, we're where we were essentially 3 months ago. Poor taxpayers frustrated, I can't fix that, but, and now what do we do? So we're facing seizure and the need to full pay a big tax bill, which he would have paid previously if he could have. Let's be real. Why would he have paid me to help him with his problem if he could have done it then?
Right.
And so the unreasonableness of the situation now with this 30-day deal with the seizure, and it's just very frustrating on my end. We're going to fix it. Don't get me wrong. We've got some things working, but I guess the takeaway is that it's better to be proactive, and to keep pushing through, and to be persistent, because we will get to a good place for this person. I'm confident of that. But waiting and sitting around and not doing something because you think it's dormant, and which it may be, it is not the best answer. Like, it's important to do things.
Is that the same case that I'm thinking of, where they levied the credit card processor and they had the wrong?
Well, yeah,
the wrong
it's just messy. Yeah, everything is wrong about that case. So.
That's the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if anything, no, that's a great story, and it's a testament to anybody in our audience that this can become a messy process if you let it. And I mean, we've said it time and time again on the show. It's being proactive. Coming in, getting professional help, have your documentation in order and ready to go, ready to take those proactive steps to address the issue, because it's only going to compound. And I love that you mentioned the word dormant, because I think a lot of people tend to think that because they're not getting regular communication from the IRS means that, oh, my issue's just kind of in limbo. It's not. It's in the queue, and they will get there. So make sure that you...
Right. It's funny you should say that, because COVID, last year, March, whatever, the IRS agreed, as a matter of principle, said we're not going to issue any more liens and levies for a period of time during this COVID pandemic. Mm-hmm. Well, we're here to tell you that that's over. That principle's over, because it is happening. I know for a fact, because I saw the liens myself filed and the levies filed with, so the IRS is the COVID dormancy strong. Is over, and it seems to be doubling up. They're doubling down, I should say, actually. They're out. They're back collecting now.
Sure. So. Lost time to make up for at this point of the game, it sounds like. Well, hey, guys, great conversation today on liens and levies. Is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask you about in this respect that you want to make sure that our audience takes home today?
We didn't talk a lot about bank levies, but I mean, it's the same principle. Do something.
I don't know how much time we have, but that, a very common, difficult issue for us is that factoring. When you have factoring companies involved and they issue the levy.
That's a whole different. That's a different podcast.
That may take 30 minminutes right there, just trying to do that legally. It is, but it's a classic example of how the IRS is a super creditor.
Yeah.
Because they leapfrog
somebody else.
They just start leapfrogging creditors, and they grabbing, and these poor factoring companies are kind of left out. So anyway, but
yeah.
Well, stay tuned. It sounds like we've got another topic ready for another episode. Well, hey, guys, look, really appreciate your time then today, kind of dissecting this question. I know this is one of the bigger FAQs that you guys have on your website that you're asked about regularly. So a lot of key takeaways, a lot of good strategies, and really a great conversation overall. So thank you again for your time. Really appreciate it today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
And look, hey, we want to thank you, our audience, for joining us for yet another edition of Talkin Tax. If you liked what you saw, you liked what you heard today, remember, feel free to like this content wherever you're checking it out, comment, subscribe to the show, and of course, share it all, with friends and families. As you know, it's serious tax talk with a Louisiana twist, so we're naturally addressing those topics that pertain to you that could befall upon you from the IRS, and we'd hate for you to go into any situation that deals with the IRS unequipped without that knowledge and those tools in your belt to be able to tackle the situation at hand. So for Carrie and Angie Bryson, I'm Ryan Ruff saying so long. We thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of Talkin Tax.